Welcome to the Power of Reading, a book review program that discusses the latest Catholic books. A book is a dream you hold in your hand. This program is prepared for Radio Maria Nairobi and presented to you by the Daughters of St. Paul.
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome once again to the Power of Reading program here at Radio Maria Nairobi, a Christian voice in your home. I am your host and presenter, Sister Beatrice from the Daughters of St. Paul. In our Power of Reading program, we continue to introduce to you the important classical and latest Catholic books. And this program, we want to promote and revive the reading culture because we believe the reading culture has a good and lasting effects on our faith as Christians and in our everyday life. And we see, of course, a great decline in this age of modern technology in the area of reading because we have access to this new modern communication technology, and we feel that probably it has overtaken the books and there is no need of reading. But we realize that after a few decades of the internet, the written word still stands tall. And even though we may have access to the internet, we realize that there is a special way of learning from books that we cannot achieve through the internet. And today in our program, we shall review a very beautiful book called Body, Mind and Spirit. And this book actually is an introduction to Christian psychology, and this book is written by Brother Fergus Garrett. Now, this is one of maybe interesting book and maybe probably not a common topic that we are used to reading. But as we say in this program, The Power of Reading, that the aim of this program is to help us grow, of course, in our faith, but also grow in our human development. And this book actually deals with the human person. And this is a very, very important topic because we live in a world whereby we maybe think about our wealth, about material things, but somehow we have neglected the human person. Now, let me introduce this book according to how the author introduces in his book. And in the introduction, actually, he first quotes Psalm 8, verse 5. Psalm 8, verse 5 says, "What are human beings that you are mindful of them?" What are human beings that you are mindful of them? That's what the psalmist asks God. So what the author does is, first of all, is to introduce to us the purpose of this book, Body, Mind, and Spirit, an introduction to Christian psychology. And he begins this book by asking, what is psychology? And he says that there are many ways to study human beings as groups in anthropology or sociology. Anthropology deals with the human person within a group, or even in sociology, or as creators of culture in history and archaeology, or as an animal. You know, we are also part of the animal kingdom, so we can be studied in terms of biology, whereby people understand how does the human being body work. The author says psychology, which is the scope of this book, Body, Mind, and Spirit, however, is the study of the whole human person, both what is common to all and what is specific to an individual. And psychology is an attempt to describe man the unknown. And these are words from one French doctor, Alexis Carrel, and what others have called the mystery of the human person. And psychology attempts to describe the structure of the person and the process which result in individual decision-making and behavior. And it also, this is psychology, attempts to relate the particular structures and processes to the details of the person's history. Then psychology, of course, is also concerned with what a person feels, what a person understands, what a person knows, what a person chooses, and actually what a person does, as well as with the questions of how and why this happens. So psychology actually is dealing with a person, even in terms of what we say, searching for meaning about life. However, the author of this book, Body, Mind, and Spirit, Fergus Garrett, says we also have to understand what is Christian psychology, because there is something called Christian psychology. He says Christian psychology begins with the Christian answers to questions such as, who am I? Why am I here? What happens when I die? What is a good life? Christian psychology integrates these answers with a total picture of the human person. The author also tells us that Christian psychology emphasizes values, and in particular the values which call a person to go beyond herself or himself to the other and finally to God. And Christian psychology also concerns vocation and mission, holiness and apostolic effectiveness of the person, and it concerns the call to live in communion with God, that is the God of love, in his Son Jesus Christ as members of his body through the power of the Spirit, while working for the fullness of his presence in the kingdom of God. So this book is not actually an introduction. He says this is an introduction and not a scientific presentation of psychology. However, there is plenty of evidence from scientific investigations in some of the books which he lists at the end of the book. There's a very long bibliography that if anyone who reads this book would want to deepen any of the topics or even to confirm what the author is saying, the bibliography is also provided. And this book also has practical exercises at the end of particular topics, and the author also tells us as readers, we are encouraged to carry out those practical exercises, and the content provides a broad outline of the foundations which can also take you to further study in the area of psychology, in the area of understanding the human person. And he says that this book also is an incentive for the reader to grow in self-knowledge, especially through recourse to persons with experience and expertise. And this description of the human person begins with the adult person's present experience of being and then goes on to include the person's past experiences. And this leads to the possibility of a deeper understanding of the present structure and processes of one's personality, especially the motivation and resources for growth in freedom to carry out one's present or future Christian vocational project. And the present self exists because of its past, and its future prospects depend on the use it makes of the potential energy, resources available in daily struggle. And it is essential that our description of the human person is integral. It must include all aspects, that is, all aspects of being as we look at them from a psychological point of view, include physiological, mental, spiritual, what is conscious and what is unconscious. And it must emphasize the constant interaction between these aspects and their different levels. So that is just an overview of what this book is trying to achieve in helping us to enter into what we call Christian psychology, but with the aim of knowing oneself, understanding oneself, so that one can fully respond to the grace of God. And that is the beauty of this book, because it somehow helps the reader to put their feet on the ground. We are called to be spiritual beings, but we are spiritual beings created in a loving way by God as human beings, which we can say we are material. Material means we are limited, but that does not reduce the value of who we are in the eyes of God, and also the importance of understanding who we are, because also a human person is a mystery, as the author of this book we are reviewing today, Body, Mind, and Spirit, has told us. So we are going to take our first break, and then we shall come back and continue reviewing the book, Body, Mind, and Spirit, in this program of The Power of Reading. Welcome to the Power of Reading here at Radio Maria Nairobi, a Christian voice in your home. I am your host and presenter, Sister Beatrice from the Daughters of St. Paul. And today in the Power of Reading program, we review the book Body, Mind and Spirit, an introduction to Christian psychology by Fergus Garrett. And this is actually a book published by Paulines Publications Africa. Now, this book is divided into 12 chapters. It's divided into 12 chapters that I'm going to quickly run an overview of what the author wants to share with us in this book, Body, Mind, and Spirit. Chapter 1 is the human person experiences life. The human person experiences life. And here he deals with areas of a first observation, I am in the world. A second observation, I am with others. A third observation, my world is also spiritual. A fourth observation, I am in the presence of the Supreme Being. And a fifth observation, I know myself. Then chapter 2 deals with myself, awareness of deeper aspects. And the first method, the outside and the inside. Then the second method, human activity. The third method, conscious and unconscious. And the fourth method, beyond myself. Then chapter 3 deals with the body, person, a body of bone and muscle. A body needs energy and renewal. The body has transport system. The body has communication system. The body has chemical messengers. The body has sensors. The body has defense systems, and the person in the body. Then chapter 4 deals with the human mind. So the chapter 3 is about the physical part of the person. The human mind, that is the memory, the intellect, the preconscious, subconscious, and unconscious, and the dreaming, the woundedness. That is where we see the human mind. Then chapter 5 deals with the human spirit in areas of the instinct, feelings, emotions, enjoyment and suffering, desires, attitude, habits, free will, conscience, values, relationships, self-transcendence, experience. Chapter 6 deals with growth, first birth from the womb, second birth, moving independently, third birth, a sexual person. Then it deals with the stages and tasks, born again Christian, searching for myself, human needs, moral development, faith development, the questions that lead to us searching for the meaning of life. Chapter 7 deals with motivation. What is important? The levels of living's needs and emotional desires, values and rational desires, attitudes and habits, and how adults learn. Chapter 8 deals with self-knowledge and self-acceptance, listening to myself, the courage to accept oneself, deciding and acting, issues of conversion. Chapter 9 deals with being female and male, the genotype and the phenotype, masculine and feminine, sexual feelings and emotions, psychosexual maturity, marriage and celibacy. Chapter 10 deals with relationships, personality types, communication, defense mechanisms, men and women. Chapter 11 deals with healthy and unhealthy situations in the human person, the 9 types of growth or deterioration, neurosis and psychosis, dis-ease and disease, that is our psychosomatic problems, the road to maturity, helping others, that is affirmation. And finally, chapter 12 deals with the Christian vocation, call and response, human motivation, consistency and inconsistency, holiness and apostolic effectiveness, and also it deals with spiritual resources. Where do we find our spiritual resources as human beings? Now, when we go to chapter 1, we realize that the author actually deals with the human person and the experiences of life. I think the experience of life is something that defines the human person in a very, very important way. And he writes in his book that our study of psychology is nothing less than the study of our own selves. How can I know and understand my own self? Who am I? What is the relationship between myself, my body, my mind, and my spirit? And there are several kinds of answers to questions about the nature of the human person. The nature of the human person. And scientific observation can record accurately such things as the reaction time of a motorist who is suddenly presented with a need for action, or the levels of certain hormones in the blood. And we see the way people react we can say that these can help us understand these experiences about the human person. And here also the author talks about the observances. For example, the first observation we make is that we are in the world. Even as small children, we realize we exist in a certain place and we are related to this place we exist in. We are related to the world. We are related to the earth. We are related to the water, to the air, to plants, to animals, to the sun, to the moon. There's something that they do to us. If there is no sun, there is no light, then I cannot do anything because I cannot see. So we realize that my body is part of the world. And even though my body is part of the world, it is given to me as my own. Then, of course, you have the second observation. The second observation helps us to understand, okay, I am in this world, but I'm in the world with other people. I am related and connected in some way with all these other people, and together we are responsible for the care and the maintenance of the world. And this is another realization that helps us to see the experience of this human person. And we realize that even in this relating to other people, some people are closer to us than others because they are our parents, our siblings, our relations. Sometimes they become our spouses, and this creates a different relationship. Of course, the third observation is my world is also spiritual. I am not just this physicality that is seen, but I am also a spirit person. And we realize that even human relationships are not just bodily relationships, but they're also spiritual. We feel close to people, even to people who are not even near us, because we know them. And we see that this is also another observation we make about our world, what we understand about the world. And we realize also we are a spirit being because we have a memory. And this memory can even be unconscious and be a source of many experiences that I have. Of course, the fourth observation is that I am in the presence of something greater than me, what we call the supreme being, or in a better language, God. And human beings are actually naturally religious. And we have a natural tendency as human beings to look beyond ourselves and beyond the world of nature towards a supreme being who has great power and attractiveness. And the evidence shows that all people of all times have recognized such a being, though with various attributes. So we find that even people who do not know about Christ, they have a certain idea that there is a supreme being. So that is something that is very normal and part of the Christian psychology, that we realize there's a certain helplessness in us. There's something greater than us. There's something that controls our life. Then, of course, the fifth observance is I know myself. This means when I observe the world, the wonderful world of nature and spirit, I know and realize that as a human person, I am different from every other kind of creature. I know that I know. I am aware of my own thinking, of my feelings, my instincts and needs. I can understand and evaluate my situation in this world, and I can decide how I will respond. So these are the things that our author presents to us in chapter 1 of this book, The Human Experiences of Life. Of course, I have shared with you in a very, very brief manner, and I'm sure that if you get this copy from any of our bookshops, you can be able to read more of this information, to reflect on it. In fact, he has also presented to us some questions, some phrases for reflection, so that we can really drive home these points that he is giving us. Let us take a break as we continue to review the book Body, Mind and Spirit, a book by Fergus Garrett. Welcome back to the Power of Reading program here at Radio Maria Nairobi, a Christian voice in your home. I am your host and presenter, Sister Beatrice, from the Daughters of St. Paul. And today we are reviewing the book Body, Mind and Spirit, an introduction to Christian psychology, a book written by Brother Fergus Garrett. And we have already seen chapter 1 that has helped us to see the experiences of the human person and the experiences of life. In chapter 2, I'm going to go through each chapter briefly in this book because I think it is important. It is not an easy book to review because also it deals with topics that we don't deal with every day. So we are going to deal with half of the topics in this program and the others we shall look at them next week. So the second chapter deals with my self-awareness of deeper aspects. And it says that we are all aware that once we start looking inwards at what we call the self, we can be confused by the great variety of feelings, experiences, reactions, responses, decisions, and behaviors. And our minds are full of memories, images, and possibilities. Our bodies are constantly supplying us with information in the form of sensations. We are attracted or repelled by so much outside of us. And how can I organize or classify all this and come to understand something of myself? So here the author talks about self-awareness, and actually he gives us 4 methods that we can use to become aware of ourselves. And I would want to review these methods with you. The first one, he says, the outside and the inside. And he says that when I look at a person or listen to or touch such a person, I make contact with the outside of that person, that is the body. But my reactions or responses immediately give me information about the real person inside. I get some meaning from this outside information, the insights, sounds, touch. The inside is being communicated. Of course, a totally false meaning can be communicated either because the other person is a very good actor or because my own mind is so twisted that it distorts the reality which has been communicated. So the body is the means by which my inside, the deeper part of myself, can reach your inside. My real self must show itself on the outside before you can get to know me. I need to tell you what is in my mind, what my intentions are, and what my feelings are about you. The body is mainly outside, but the mind and the spirit are definitely inside. There's a detail of this explanation in chapter 3, 4, and 5. And it is important to be aware of the differences between the outside and the inside. What you see is not the real me. You could easily be mistaken about me. My efforts to reveal what is inside me are only partly successful. Your efforts to understand what I am communicating are also only partly successful. So this also helps us to understand why we talk about the mystery of the human person. I may not be able to express all what is within me, and you may not be able to comprehend all what I am expressing. And he gives us some examples there, or what we'd call some exercises to understand this first method, the outside and the inside. How you understand and see how life is presented to you in terms of interacting with the other person. He also talks about a second method, the human activity. Whenever I do something, feel something, or know something, it is my whole self being involved. Whenever I do something, feel something, or know something, it is my whole self that is involved. And the activities are my own. It is I, myself, in action, even though the action may be mainly in the body, or mainly in the mind, or mainly in the spirit. As he gives us a chart here, what doing is in terms of body, mind, and spirit. What feeling is in terms of body, mind, and spirit. What knowing is in terms of body, mind, and spirit. Okay, I'll read this to you because I find it very interesting. Now, when he says, whenever I do something, the doing in the body is probably movement. The doing in the mind is mainly thinking. The doing in the spirit is mainly willing. There's a will. You may move, but you don't have the will. Then in terms of feeling, I feel something. the body senses. You can feel if it is cold or it is warm or you are joyful. Then the mind remembers. Here is the memory. The mind remembers. And that's why you would know that if you feel a certain kind of much heat, you may know that this might burn me. Or if you feel some water, the mind tells you this will make you wet. Then the feeling of the mind is remembering. And the feeling of the spirit is emoting. It presents the emotion. You can also know something. We're talking about human activity. So the body learns. The body can learn to type. The body can learn to run. The body can learn to walk. The mind here, the knowing of the mind is understanding. You understand what you are knowing or doing, learning. Then in the spirit, you commune. There's that communication, there is that communion. So we realize that the second method, what he calls the human activity, the author wants to help us to understand the way when we act as a whole person. And for us to be able to complete what we would call a human activity, we have to put together all these faculties, the body, the mind, and the spirit. So it means that if I have to know something, I have to remember it, I have to understand it. Then, of course, he deals with the third method, that is conscious and unconscious. That means I do not know all about myself. My body carries on many activities without my knowing. Sometimes I am able to pay attention to some of these activities, but never to all of them. For example, I'm not usually aware of what happens to my food after I swallow it. My mind has many unconscious areas. I am usually aware of only a tiny fraction of all that is stored in my memory is available to me. So we have that conscious and the unconscious. So there are things, even if we know them, we push them to the unconscious because you have to leave space for other things to take up the space of the immediate memory that we have. Then, of course, the fourth method talks about going beyond myself. This is because the human nature is that we are created with a desire. That means none of us is satisfied with our present state. We want to be stronger or healthier or more beautiful or to live in more luxury with all the senses satisfied. Another wants to be able to make more use of her ability to achieve success. Another wants to follow the example of Mother Teresa. We have so many desires. So there's also this going beyond myself. I exert myself for something good. And of course, the issue of going beyond myself is connected to desire or ambition. And this also can be either in our body or mind or spirit. I can define myself simply in terms of my bodily appearance. And people are very happy to say how beautiful they are, how strong they are, what is their weight, what is their height. Or we can define ourselves in terms of our skills, abilities, and talents. That is at the level of the mind. And the third level, it involves more, I have to be something beyond myself, because as we said, the human being is created with that desire to go beyond themselves. So this is also the fourth part that the author presents to us in chapter 2, the fourth method of coming to what we call self-awareness. Now, of course, chapter 3 goes straight to begin the three faculties that we see in the person, the body, the mind, and the spirit. The author presents to us the whole area of the person as a body. I know most of the time we don't think of ourselves as a body. We quickly want to become very spiritual. In fact, we define each other. Oh, she's very spiritual. Sometimes we say they are very holy and things like that. But the body is very, very important according to our author in terms of knowing and understanding ourselves as a human person. And of course, he goes through the whole experience of what it means to study the human body. He talks about anatomy as a study of the various organs of the human bodies and the interaction. Physiology is the study of the process which enables all the organs to function smoothly and together. And of course, this is a very big study that we have. We have a lot of knowledge about our body. And actually, the body mainly maintains itself, moves itself, repairs itself, and reproduces itself. So the body is also a miracle in itself. And of course, the body is the only visible part of us. And actually, he quotes Luke chapter 22, verse 19, when Jesus said, "This is my body, which will be given up for you." And when Jesus is presenting himself like that, he's actually referring to his whole person in its divinity and humanity. And he used his body as a sign or symbol of his whole life, especially his suffering, death, and resurrection. And of course, we are also told when a man and a woman marry, they are no longer two but one flesh. And their bodily union is a symbol of communion of persons to which they commit themselves. So here the author also wants to remind us that even though there's a lot of biology involved in the study of the body, there is also a lot of spiritual understanding, theological understanding of the body that even God himself gave us his body for our food. And of course, it talks about the body as bone and muscle, the body that needs energy and renewal. We need to take care of our body. And of course, he talks about the different functions of the body. The body has a transport system, how different nutrients are transported around the body. He talks about the communication system, which is the nervous system. And he does not talk about these things just to entertain us with a bit of science and biology, but because sometimes even when we are depressed, it can affect our transport systems in the body, our communication system in the body, the chemical messages in the body. Actually, this is very important in the study of psychology, the hormones. We talk about neurons that we find in our nervous system that sometimes behave in a certain way if we are happy, depressed, excited, all those kind of things. Of course, hormones are produced in very small quantities but have very powerful effects when the right balance is not achieved. So that is very, very important to understand that even our body talks to us. We are also told that our body talks to us. Of course, the body has sensors, the body has a defense system, and of course, there's a person in the body. We are not separate from our bodies. We live inside our body. Now, chapter 5 talks about the human feelings, and this is where we deal with the instincts, feelings, emotions, the human spirit. I am more than my body. I am more than my mind. And this is where we see the spiritual goals of Christian extend far beyond biological and beyond instincts and also beyond world relationships. So here we are able to see life from a very different point of view. And of course, emotion, he says, is a term that is more exact than feeling. It refers to a feeling towards an object that has been seen and evaluated. So we can have a feeling, but emotion is not a feeling. Emotion is a step further than a feeling, because already emotion is something that comes out after you have filtered a certain amount of information. And of course, the emotions and whatever we feel, this spirit aspect of our life is also very, very important, because it helps us to deal with certain issues about joy, about feeling sad, what makes me angry. This is the area where we look at these things. It helps us to understand, do we really enjoy what makes us suffer? The author also explores our desires, our attitudes, our habits, and how all this affects who we are as a human being. So he says that my actions can be reactions or responses to emotional desires, and these actions send me back to myself. In the end, habitual actions, we can say that they lead us to know who we are. They can help us to look at that. And of course, in this area of the spirit, we are talking about body, mind, and spirit. This is where you also explore things like free will. He has explored very well free will. That is a capacity and an ability to choose, to want, to hope, to follow an attraction or desire. There's also the conscience, which is very, very important. The conscience, following one conscience, and conscience concerns our values, the things we see as important for all times and places. And a value is not something important for me, but something important in itself. So that is the conscience. Then, of course, he talks about values. The values are very important. He says conscience grows and develops as values are discovered and accepted. So you have to look for values. And values not only indicate important options, they also contain the imperative message, you ought to do this. This is what gives us a radar, gives us that human aspect that is connected also to the divine. And of course, he talks about self-transcendence. Self-transcendence is the capacity of a person to transcend oneself through my knowledge, then through morality, and finally through love. It is very important to evaluate ourselves to see what are our goals and to be able to reach a certain level of maturity's important values, because we are challenged every day by the different experiences that we have. And he says that according to great Christian theologians or philosophers or even people from, we can say, the intellectual world, he gives examples of Aristotle, Aquinas, Karl Rahner, Bernard Lonergan, and others. It is clear in Christian revelation that every person has the capacity for self-transcendence. It is the capacity to search for and to know God, which is inherent in each of us, together with the capacity to receive His Spirit, His grace, and the free gift. So he also talks about the experience of God. That is also a very beautiful topic in this book. How do we experience God as human beings? How do we experience God as human beings? We have actually dealt with chapter 1 to 5 of this book, Body, Mind, and Spirit, which I decided that we are going to review it in 2 programs, because I feel that the information here is information that it should reach you, dear listener, and it is important for all of us. So next week we shall continue reviewing the same book, and we see the other 7 chapters that have remained and that are very, very important in growing as a human person. Remember, Saint Irenaeus said the glory of God is a human being fully alive. So if you are not fully alive as a human being in all areas, body, mind, and spirit, it is very difficult to give glory to God. So thank you for being with us in our program today, The Power of Reading. And I want to encourage you, dear listener, to continue reading. The Body, Mind, and Spirit is a book by Brother Fergus Garrett, and it is published by Pauline's Publications Africa, and it's a book that I should really encourage you to read. Is one of the most beautiful books that deals with an introduction to Christian psychology. You can get this book from any of the Pauline's bookshop, and you can also be able to buy this book online at www.paulinesafrica.org. So you can visit us there and be able to get a copy of Body, Mind, and Spirit. You can also give it as a gift to any of your friends, because it's a book that can go a long way in helping a person to grow in their faith, to grow in their human development. I also take this opportunity to thank Mr. Timothy Moredi, our studio technician, for recording this program for us here at Pauline's Studio, Nairobi, and it has been recorded for Radio Maria Nairobi. I've been your host and presenter, Sister Beatrice, and until next week, thank you and may God bless you.
You have been listening to the Power of Reading program. Join us next week as we continue discovering the wonderful world of books. This program is prepared for Radio Maria Nairobi and presented to you by the Daughters of St. Paul.